When a man loses love for you, he'll first do these two things. We're going to dive into this conversation today. Love doesn't just vanish overnight, it usually happens in a slow trickle. And I'm going to share with you a blog post I recently did. But before I do, I want to tell you where this video was birthed. And it was because I was witnessing two friends of mine going through a fight, a couple that I know going through a fight. I happened to be a witness in the room what was going on. And as I was reflecting upon what was actually happening, and it doesn't matter if it was the man who initiated the issue or the woman that initiated the issue, what I noticed was contempt. It appears to me that most relationships fail for four primary reasons that the Gottmans talk about. And if you're not familiar with the work of John and Julie Gottman, I highly recommend checking out the book, 8 Dates. 8 Dates, and all the books I recommend are listed below. The work of the Gottmans. So you can just see how it's written there, Gottmans. Type in Gottman Institute. They talk about the four horsemen of the apocalypse. That is contempt, criticism, defensiveness, and stonewalling. Contempt, criticism, defensiveness, and stonewalling as the primary reasons for relationships ending. But that's when it gets really deep and really bad. Okay, really deep and really bad. In fact, I shared with you, I want to actually share the blog I wrote based on witnessing this experience. And I wrote the following. After years of witnessing human behavior as a coach, I can tell you most love doesn't explode in some Hollywood-worthy meltdown. It rots quietly, pathetically, right under their noses. I've seen it. It's seen it way too many times. Two people who once couldn't keep their hands off of each other now sit across the room, scrolling their phones, pretending they're fine, while resentment eats them alive from the inside out. It doesn't happen because of big betrayals. It doesn't happen because of little ones. The shrugged off apologies, the rolled eyes, the whatever tossed someone they used to move mountains for, whatever. You know what kills love? Arrogance, complacency, the lazy belief that love will just take care of itself. And before they even realize it, they're standing in the cold, quiet war zone where passion once lived, wondering how the hell it got this bad. Here's the truth. Love doesn't die because people stop loving. It dies because they stop showing up. The couples who survive, they don't wait until the house is on fire. They get off their damn high horse. They talk, they listen, they apologize like they mean it. And they fight for each other when it's uncomfortable, messy, or inconvenient. You want real love? Drop the ego, pick up some humility, and remember, connection dies in silence, not in screaming. So, even though I'm going to lean into this conversation of how you notice someone is pulling away in the early stages of a relationship and not to the place where it gets to the four horsemen of the apocalypse, where there's defensiveness, contempt, criticism, or stonewalling. But to notice the subtle signs before this happens. But before we do, we need to address love, or at least the way we perceive love in the early stage of dating. Now, if you're not familiar with well, I'm sure if you've watched my channel long enough, you've heard me talk about lust, limerence, and insecure attachment. Lust, limerence, and insecure attachment. Now, lust is when you're physically desiring someone. And if you think about our current dating environment, it is all built on lust and limerence. And limerence is extreme infatuation. And look at the way our dating is lined up. It's about entertaining one another. It's about romance. It's about physical connection. This is the way most relationships, the bus that's driving most relationships, are based on entertainment, romance, and physical connection without building the deep roots of trust that sustain a long-term relationship. And I mentioned insecure attachment. Now, if you're brand new to my channel, you may never have heard this before. If you're a regular on my channel, you're going to hear me talk about this for just a minute. but we're going to talk about insecure and secure attachment as described in the book Attached by Amir Levine and Rachel Heller. Now there's two primary attachment styles. There's secure, which everyone fantasy believes that they're secure. In fact, when they take the online test, it seems like everybody's secure. And yet, if you look at their relationship patterns, they probably fall in the insecure attachment style. And we perceive love as being, well, attachment is perceived as love, and insecure attachment either looks anxious or it looks avoidant. Anxious are oftentimes those needy, clingy, lovey-dovey types, and avoidant is, hey, stay away from me. I don't want to talk about my feelings. That's the way it oftentimes shows up. So we confuse love in this way, and people walk into relationship through these insecure attachment, lust, or limits without building the deep roots of trust. How is trust built? Trust is built through time, it's through experience, it's through social activities, it's through hobbies, it's through mutual interest, it's through spending time with family and friends. And yes, it includes intimacy, which is both physical, the penis inside the vagina, and emotional. I know I just offended a few people. I just wanted to make you laugh for a second. But intimacy isn't just sex. It's about connecting at a heart-centered level. So I was saddened by this couple that I shared with you before. And I fear that, they may not be able to make it if they're still represent contempt. And so I talked to a dear friend of mine this morning. She's been in a relationship for 6 years. And I was sharing the story of what I witnessed over the weekend. And I wanted to unpack it with her because she's now moving in with her partner, her boyfriend, that they've been together for maybe almost 6.5 years. And we started to unpack, and I said, when did you feel love for your partner? And she said, and I don't want to say his name publicly, I'll call him Tim for a second, but when did you feel love for Tim? And she said about 6 months in. And I go, what made the difference at 6 months? And this is what she said. She goes, why I knew this was the right relationship, because we were both all in. Now, for a moment, I want to talk about the 3 levels of commitment, at least of the world according to Jonathan in my new book that I'm writing. But the 3 levels of commitment is centered around the first agreement. The first level is monogamy and exclusivity. In other words, it's the agreement that if we're sleeping together, we're going to be monogamous one another, and that we're not going to be actively seeking to meet other people. And so that's what I call the first level of commitment, is monogamy and exclusivity. Now, here's the thing. A lot of people that are in friends with benefits relationships, situationships, certainly hookups, even casual relationships don't have clear boundaries centered around this, okay? Usually serious relationships, but a lot of people enter into relationship today with very little agreements. They're barely hitting level 1 of commitment. Now, by the time you get to the 3-month mark within a relationship, and again, this is if you're spending regular time together. But Jonathan, I'm in a long distance relationship. We spend all day texting one another. We've only seen each other once in 8 months. Folks, again, if you talking on the telephone doesn't build the trust that you need. Trust is built through circumstances. It's built through situations. It's built through social activities, hobbies, mutual interests, spending time with family and friends. Because if you want to get to level 2 of commitment, you have to reach a level of teamwork with one another. Teamwork means we operate as a team with one another. We are on the same page. We are helping each other learn and grow. We are helping each other in each other's lives. Hey, I need a ride to the airport. Done. I'm your teammate. Hey, I've got a colonoscopy appointment. I need you to take me there and wait for me and pick me up. Done. I'm a teammate. Hey, I've got something going on with my children's graduation. They're graduating from getting their master's or their doctorate, like I hope my son does. Boom, I'm going to go with you. That's a teammate, okay? That's the second level of commitment. And the third level of commitment, and this is what she described, is when they reached a place of being all in. In other words, for better, for worse, sickness and health, they were all in this relationship. See, sadly, many couples never get there because of what I'm about to share with you. They never reach this level of all in, or worse, like the couple I just shared with you, they got all in. But slowly over time, the relationship began to deteriorate. So the two signs that's going to suggest that this man is falling out of love with you, and write this down, someone put it in the chat box, but the first sign is emotional withdrawal. Emotional withdrawal. They become distant, not just physically, but emotionally. Conversations become superficial. The deep connection you once shared starts to wane. It starts on an emotional level. You'll just start to feel some emotional distance between the two of you. It's a reflection of an emotional gap that's forming. And studies have shown that reduced physical affection often parallels emotional distancing in relationship. That's the first, 11:11. Just missed it. When we start to emotionally disconnect. You know, it's interesting. I'll save this for a moment. I'll save it now. I had a client who's been in a 1.5-year relationship. And she calls me up and she goes, Jonathan, I need to process something with you. In fact, by the way, if you need some support, there's a link right here to schedule a discovery call with me to see if working with a coach is right for you. I'm not here to necessarily help you land the guy. Sometimes I can be here to help you process your relationship that you're already in. So if you need some support, there's links below. But she wanted to process what's coming up in her relationship. And she shared, and you could just tell, little by little, the way she outlined it, little by little, he was emotionally disconnecting from the relationship. He was emotionally disconnecting. And the way he was acting was kind of cruel. And we talked about her options in this particular case, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But at first, he started to emotionally disconnect from her. The second sign, when a person, particularly when a man starts to lose love for you, is when there's a physical withdrawal, The second sign is noticeable. Decreased physical intimacy, affectionate gestures like holding hands, hugging, kissing become rare. The decline isn't just about physical touch. It's a reflection of an emotional gap that's forming. And studies have shown that reduced physical affection often parallels emotional distancing. So you'll start to notice this happening. There's an emotional disconnect, but there's also a physical disconnect. Now, it's not absolute that they completely stop holding hands or cuddling a little bit, but you can start to energetically feel this, just like that client I was sharing with you. She was starting to feel the emotional disconnect, the physical disconnect, and she wanted some perspective on this and what she could do going forward. And what I shared with her, I said, look, option one, or by the way, is that you could end the relationship based on what you shared with me. I mean, certainly that's an option. You can end the relationship. You know, if you're not getting your needs met, then you have to ask yourself, is it worth being in this relationship? And a lot of people, that's their first reaction. In fact, that's what she wanted to do. Her second option is to accept his behavior. Like, in other words, just accept this is who he is. He's not overly affectionate. He's withdrawn. He's been disconnecting. She can accept this, but it'll probably fall apart at some point. One or both of them is going to end it. Although men in particular, once they're in a relationship, if they're getting just their base needs met, they tend to nest in a relationship. Nest, N-E-S-T, they nest. And they oftentimes don't go anywhere. But if she accepted that behavior, and he's one of these guys, it's my way or the highway type of person. He is very set in his ways. And I recognize that. And the third option, and we're going to talk about the antidote, so you never get to this point of somebody emotionally or physically withdrawing. We'll talk about the antidote in a moment. But what she did, what I recommended to her, is she speak her truth to him. She speak her truth. And so we kind of outlined a script of what she could say. we spend about, well, first off, we spent about 45 minutes talking it through, processing it, unpacking it. And then finally, we wrote the script of what she should say. And you know what happened? I got a text message later that evening saying he was unaware of his behavior. Ladies, I joke about this frequently, but many of you have duct tape on your mouth, meaning there's a fear to speak up to this person that you care about, that you see a future with, and yet you wear duct tape. And I'm here to encourage over and over and over again to rip that duct tape off and start speaking your truth. In fact, this is what I talk about in my book, What the Heck is Self-Love Anyway? A Journey of Personal Development, Self-Help, Spiritual Work. There's a link below to get a copy of all the books I recommend. Chapter 1, speak your truth, do it with kindness. And Chapter 9, if it's sincere and from the heart, you can't say the wrong thing to the right person. So she opened up to him. And guess what happened? He apologized. He said, what can I do to work through this? Or what can we do to work together? And this is the antidote I'm about to share with you. So I remember I mentioned earlier, I was speaking about my friend whose boyfriend and them became all in at the 6-month mark. Well, she made a comment that I had to write down. These aren't my words, but this is the comment she said. She said, we are in a working relationship. And I thought, working relationship. And what she means is from the very first day they began their relationship, whenever they butted up against an issue, they worked through it. In other words, and it hasn't been easy. They have issues regularly, constantly, all the time. But Jonathan, that might not be the right relationship. But Jonathan, I'm supposed to sit my feminine energy and let the guy figure it all out. See, a working relationship means you're actively aware of your triggers, your insecurities, your fears, your negative patterns, your limiting beliefs. And when you butt up against them, you work through it. And this is a couple I've known from the day they began dating. In the first 6 months, they were in la la land. None of this stuff really showed up that significantly. And they built the deep roots of trust early on so they could go all in. But the truth is, he wanted to work on the relationship. He wasn't going to shy away. And he's a really great guy, but he has some unresolved issues from his childhood. She has some unresolved issues from her childhood. And when they went to therapy for a while together, they worked through their stuff, but they constantly work through it. Years ago, my parents had a dinner party, and there were 3 couples, including my mom and dad at the table, and collectively 150 years of marriage. And I asked one of the couples, what's the secret to relationship success? And she said, both of them looked at me and said, not going to bed angry at each other. They said, we work through our stuff all the time. A working relationship basically means we have to let go of the egoic fantasy of lust and limerence and insecure attachment as if that's going to be the recipe for success. True success comes from resolving your conflict. And as Esther Perel says, it comes through repair through those differences. Because if you don't repair through those differences, what's going to happen? Like that couple I talked about earlier, resentment, contempt, criticism, judgments, defensiveness, stonewalling. They are all going to erode the relationship till at one point, you just don't even have the strength to work through it, because you built up so many walls of resentment that it's hard to go back to the heart and love. And what I appreciate most about what my friend shared, she says, we are in a working relationship. Folks, from the very early on, you have to build that muscle with this person. I know but Jonathan, it's all about romance and entertainment and about physical connection. In fact, every dating profile I ever read, chemistry is the most important thing for the relationship. Folks, that's the fantasy. And ladies, you buy into the worst fantasy of all, that love is going to solve all your problems. These couples all throughout history fell madly in love with each other, and yet marriages end at a 50% rate for first marriages and 65 and 75% for second marriages. Love is not the antidote. Rolling up your sleeves and working through your differences is how you're going to create relationship success. Is this sinking in? Is this resonating? I want to hear what you have to say. Post a comment below. I do my best to read them all in the first 24 hours. As always, if you find value in my videos, please hit that like button. Please share this video. Please subscribe to my channel. Hit that notification bell so you can be notified of new videos. And if you want to connect with me directly, there's links below to schedule a discovery call with me to see if working with a coach is right for you. There's a link to join my group called Midlife Love Mastery. There's a link to follow me on Instagram to get all the books I recommend and to get my dating vows. And by the way, before that penis ever goes inside the vagina, you may want to get a copy of my dating vows in the show notes. Just click that link because this will definitely help create that connection when you start with intentionality. Establishing your agreements early on is how you'll survive a relationship.